Good morning, OSCON. It's so good to see all of you here. I know it's pretty early. I'm glad you all made it. For you night owls, this is what we humans call the daytime. So I'm glad to see you all. And I'll go ahead and get started. So as he mentioned, my name is Kyla, and I'm going to talk to you about my talk, which is How Did I Get Here? But it's largely based on a fictitious book that is a New York Times worst seller and a Pulitzer Prize loser called I Am Computing, and So Can You. I was approached by Stephen Colbert and Photoshop to make this, but all jokes aside, I wanted to just tell you guys a bit about who I am and how I got here. So this slide, I'm not going to bore you by reading my whole pedigree, but the point is that I had a lot of preparation. I had lots of really good mentorship at every single stage. But even though it's laid out really nicely here on this slide, the road wasn't exactly as straightforward as it looks. So it looked a little bit more like this here. So I started, kind of milled around, but the whole purpose today is to tell you guys about how we can make sure that I'm not the only one, and people like me who don't necessarily fit the stereotypical image of a computer scientist, that we're not the only ones, that we can make this an inclusive environment for so many people. So it all started back in the late 80s. I was but a child, and this is me here. And if you look at these arrows, these were my first computers, and they're not even actually computers. I loved anything with a screen, so one of them's like a speak and spell, and the other one's a typewriter. I just knew it had keys, and it looked like a computer. And then I also like to read, so that's me in the side there. I'm actually in timeout at that point, but I brought a book because, again, did not know I was a nerd back then. But I was very, very inquisitive. So here, this was my first classroom. So I'm a professor now. I taught to imaginary people, anyone who would sit still and listen. It looks like the doll there is grabbing for her life, like, please, leave me alone, please, stop talking. But I was very inquisitive, loved to read. And here was my first engineering project. So my dad worked for a company that had a lot of pens that they'd give out to their customers. And these pens, you could take them apart, put them back together. So I thought in all of my 6-year-old mind that I would just be so awesome if I could take these pens apart and put them back together, and nobody knew. So that's what I did. I took them apart, put them together. Nobody knew. So then I had to start making sure I mixed up the colors to say, okay, I don't know how it happened this way, a blue top with a green bottom. But the point here is that I was very, very inquisitive, and my parents definitely fostered that. So moving on, just if you recognize or even own some of these, just give a clap for some of these. All right. All right, I'm in the right place. So I loved, like I told you, anything with a screen. So if you take a look at this and reminisce on your childhood, for me, I was told that a lot of these toys were boy toys. So we have to be very careful of the messages that we give kids who are interested in computing and electronics. But I've always been a child who was very hard-headed, and even though they were boy toys, I still wanted them. So moving on, I thought about, okay, computing. This was the face of computing back then. This is a young Bill Gates, and he's sitting with the Tandy 2000, and I'm pretty sure that huge, monstrous device back there has about the same computing power as my washing machine, but it's an early computer, and for someone who's interested in computing, this is what it looked like, and then this was the rest of Microsoft. So just think about what are the implicit messages that are being sent to people who want to go into computing. You may feel as though you need to look a certain way or act a certain way in order to get there. But nevertheless, I persisted. So this slide is intentionally left blank. So I've never shown this actual slide in public, and depending on your reaction, I may never do this again. But this was me in high school. So awkward as all get out, but still loved computers. So my favorite hang time, my favorite pastime was Yahoo Chat, Yahoo Games, things like this. So this was how I first got in love with the computer. Like, it was just magical to me. You could type something at your house, and then it appears at somebody else's house that you've never met. It was like magic. I couldn't be a magician, so this was like the closest thing that I could get to. And of course, we're all guilty of the next one. We all made these terrible web pages with the horrible repeating backgrounds. Don't laugh at my webpage. Like that, I spent a long time on that. But despite these seizure-inducing web pages, with the terrible backgrounds, this was one of my first introductions to coding. Even though it was just a markup language and it was just HTML, it showed me that I could actually tell the computer to do stuff. So I was further encouraged that way. Still in high school, took the advanced calculus classes and algebra classes, so of course my calculator was my best friend, but not for the reason it should have been. So the calculator got me through so much. How many of you played Tetris on your TIs? See, I'm not guilty. So yeah, even though Tetris got me through most of Algebra 2 Trig and Pre-Cal, I learned then that you could also use computing and programming to make games. This is some basic code just for Snake. I had a friend, Randy, and he actually showed me when we were in high school that, hey, you can actually make your own games. And I was like, all right, if that's what computing can help me to do, I need to do that. So then, how did I move it from something I was interested in to now go to actual college for it and get a major in it? So I did pretty much the usual track, took science and tech classes, listened to my parents, majored in it in my least hated class, because typical teenager, you hate school, everybody does. And then I learned how to program. But even though it's laid out here very neatly again, there was definitely a struggle. I had this sort of internal struggle, and it was definitely more so with me. I felt as though I had to be someone that I actually wasn't in order to excel in computing. So remember, I didn't see anyone who looked like me, but again, hard-headed. So here I'm displaying a picture of one of my mentors from college, the late Mr. Lamont Tolliver, and he encouraged me to go to the University of Michigan. So I go there, and picked up a lot of different research areas, but the one that stuck was 3D audio. And here, you're actually looking at a picture of me and my Puerto Rican homegirl, Giselle, and we are 100% of the underrepresented women who were in computer science in the PhD program at Michigan that year. This is us at our master's graduation. All two of us. So but I say that not for applause, but to wonder. There's nothing that's really uniquely special about us. We have the skill, the ability, the aptitude, but why didn't other people actually persist? So for me, I developed a coping mechanism. So coding didn't exactly fit me, but I incorporated it into things that I like. So I like music, I like hip-hop. So I Googled the intersection of that, and I found out about this rapper called MC++. And here I have listed for you guys the album called Algorithms from 2005. And I actually had a friend in grad school. We used to have these rap battles over AOL Instant Messenger. Like, we would just send rap battles back and forth. I don't know if Sam knows this, but she's not the only woman in technology that has a few bars. So we wrote the corniest raps. And if you guys don't mind, I would love to bless you with some of it. Is that okay? All right, here's a little bit. All right. I'm running like the Windows installer, gonna make a system caller. Here's the scoop. My rhymes are long like an infinite loop. Here's my theory. Your girl is fast like a SQL query. Last line. Your chick tried to diss me. I had to warn her. Your memory's messed up like a dangling pointer. Yeah. Word to Big Bird. But I did not quit my day job. I still stayed in the program, but I definitely incorporated what I loved into computing and just made it my own. So this is what the actual the demographics look like coming out. And the sliver of a slice that you can see, like, I'll zoom in for you guys. So the orangish part is all of the underrepresented people, and that little, almost not even a percent, that's me right there. So just the only person. So I started to think, what in the world would be the reason that people who look like me don't do this? So I can think of one thing. So as we think of this, we're going to actually do an experiment. This experiment was conducted a while ago, and we're going to do this now. So everybody, think in your mind and picture a computer scientist in your mind's eye. All right, now that we have that picture, we're going to go ahead and visit our friend Chris. So our friend Chris is a student who was asked the question. So he was like, all right, small in stature, skinny, no build, glasses, geek, walks funny. So all of these unfavorable characteristics. And then he starts talking about the kids. He says his kids don't know anything. They're bookworms. I'll spare you guys the whole quote, but then he goes on to talk about the scientist's mother and says, the scientist's wife, and says that, oh, she's unattractive. So one message that's being implicitly told to kids is, one, all scientists are he, and then two, that they have these undesirable traits. So we really need to think about reshaping what computing and coding looks like so that people are encouraged to do this and they can see themselves in it. So I'm going to leave you guys with a few tips that I think are very helpful to help make it more inclusive so everyone can see themselves in it. The first is be nice to the newbies. Everybody had to learn somewhere. Everybody had their first pull request. So make sure that you just take someone, and if they're new, show them how to get started. There's a resource called firsttimersonly.com that lets people make their first pull request in a nice, welcoming, warm environment that they don't have to feel so nervous in. The second, if you're different, wear that with pride. Incorporate that into your whole existence. So we all exist at this interesting intersection of multiple personalities and identities. Why not embrace it? So that's 2. 3, find your tribe. Everybody's not going to love you, but when you find the people who do love you and support you and welcome you, exist there, thrive there. But it's not always easy to find your tribe, so you need to actually mentor someone who does not look like you. This is a picture of me and my dissertation advisor, Dr. Greg Wakefield, and he's single-handedly the reason that I even persisted to get a PhD. He took me under his wing, he showed me the ropes, and I definitely thank him for it. But be a mentor to someone who doesn't fit the mold. So lastly, I just want to leave you guys with some words from Maya Angelou. So we seek success in Finland, but we die in Maine. In minor things, we are different, but in major, we are the same. So I want you guys to just think about that and take that with you, because even though you may feel as though you don't necessarily, you may not necessarily have much to do or much in common with someone, we are so much more alike than we are different. So just make sure that this girl here who wants to pursue computing and coding, every single pull request is met with kindness and love so that she can grow up and then persist to become a computer scientist. Thank you.